Hello, everyone. I'm attorney Chinwe Foster. We are doing things a little bit differently today. This is not going to be a flat out informational video like my other videos because of what's going on in our nation today with coronavirus COVID-19. I kind of wanted to talk about the order that was just signed today, was signed yesterday, but it goes into effect today. It was signed by Governor Brian Kemp. And the order is titled Executive Order to Ensure a Safe and Healthy Georgia. There are definitely legal ramifications to this order that was passed by Governor Kemp. So I wanted to bring someone in to talk with me about this order. And I wanted the person that I brought in to be someone who has a background in things of this nature, who can explain it to us, because we not just have the legal aspect, we also have the political aspect. So today I wanted to bring in Matt E. Stevens. Matt Stevens likes to call himself your favorite political nerd. He has appeared in national TV, radio, and print, including CNN, SiriusXM, TV One, iHeartRadio, and Ebony Magazine, to name a few. He now has an ongoing video series called The Matt Minute in Politics that he uses to break down political happenings in easy to understand ways. He can be found on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube with the handle at Mr. Prune Juice. At Mr. Prune Juice, Matt Stevens, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Attorney Foster?
I am doing well, thank you. So, we are talking to Georgia residents today. We're talking about this executive order signed by Governor Brian Kemp. Before we go into what the law actually says, can you tell some of my subscribers, my viewers, how did we get here?
Wow, that's a lot. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. We got here really because COVID-19 is very, very serious. If anybody watching this video is under any type of impression that this is something that we should just ignore, that it's something that it'll pass, it's not that important, you are completely wrong if you're thinking that. This order is extremely serious. It is a measure by the state government, which we really need a measurement by the federal government, but this is a measure by the state of Georgia that is essentially a shelter in place order. Now, it has several different caveats to it, and you and I will talk about that, I'm sure, over the course of this video. But basically, most Georgians for the next about 10 days or so really need to stay in the house according to this order. If I could put it in very short and easy to understand terms. There's obviously exceptions for different things like essential services, work, hospital, food, medicine, etc. But this whole measure was in response to COVID-19. Now, the reason you asked how did we get here, is because COVID-19 is spreading so fast, not just across Georgia, but across the entire country, that we've had to, as a country, and especially as the state of Georgia, had to take drastic and extreme measures in order to contain the spread of this virus. It has literally required that we take people and distance them. So people may have heard about the whole social distancing thing. Well, that is, in place because the physical distance between people, as much as we can create and maintain that over the next couple of weeks, is one of the tools that we have in our limited toolbox to slow the spread of coronavirus. So I hope that makes sense, but it's essentially a way of keeping people as much as we can apart from each other to help to help slow the spread of this very, very dangerous virus that we're facing as a nation and as a world, as a global community, really. But
Okay. Now, the executive order signed by Brian Kemp, it's titled "The Executive Order to Ensure a Safe and Healthy Georgia." We've talked about how we got here, and you've already kind of explained why we need this order. What are the A lot of people might not understand, well, why does the governor need to tell us to stay home? And if this is a law, and we'll get a little bit into that actually, but why does the governor need to tell us to stay home?
well, to put it very plainly, is that you have 159 counties in Georgia. You have hundreds of municipalities in the state. What we were experiencing prior to today, to the day when the order goes into effect, what we were experiencing was a patchwork network of counties, cities, municipalities throughout the state of Georgia. Some were stricter than others about what they deemed would be a shelter-in-place order or social distancing restrictions. We didn't have any real, a congruent effort across the state to keep people separate, to enforce the fact that only essential workers, only essential businesses need to be operating. And so you would say drive from, Gwinnett County into DeKalb and into Rockdale, and you could have experienced maybe 5 or 6 different levels of shelter in place, or 5 or 6 different levels of social distancing. So what we needed was at a state level, because we're clearly not getting it from the federal level, but that'll be for another video. But we're not getting it from the feds. We needed to get it from the state, because what was happening was you got all these different municipalities making up their own rules. News is changing every day. And, in order to keep people safe, we've got to keep the distance between people. But the virus doesn't know county lines. It doesn't know municipality lines. It doesn't know city lines. So the best way is to take the largest area of people that we can control, and in our case for Georgia, it's at the state level, and implement a statewide stay-at-home order. So it's temporary, definitely temporary. This first, what may be more stay-at-home orders, only goes through April 13th. But we definitely need it, because people are not understanding that they've got to stay at home in order to prevent the spread of this virus. So we had to come up with what is, to some people, drastic measures. To others, they're life-saving measures in order to keep people safe during this very unknown time that we're in with COVID-19.
Okay. And, what I'm concerned about as a lawyer is making sure, of course, we want to keep everyone safe in this unprecedented virus that we're dealing with, but I want to make sure that my clients and people's rights are not being violated. So let's delve a little bit into this order. One thing I was speaking with one of my colleagues is that I don't want my client, because there's not this order, I don't want my clients getting pulled over because an officer says, "Oh, you're out," and I need to make sure that you're out for a reason that's essential. Right. And then while my client is pulled over, then the officer says, "I smell marijuana," or "I see something that looks like a gun," and then this order now is infringing on my client's constitutional rights, because the officer will now say that there's probable cause to stop you. So that is, of course, I want everyone to be safe, but that's my concern in how the police could misuse this order. So let's first talk about the order. What does the order say?
Well, the order says a few things. The order is 9 pages, so pardon me if I go into a little bit of my notes. But basically, to make it very plain for people, is that if you are not essential, meaning if you don't work at a hospital, if you're not a pharmacist, if you're not helping to take care of someone who needs your help in order to live, get food, get medicine, if you don't work at a hardware store, if you don't work at, surprisingly, a liquor store, I don't know, didn't know that was essential until last month, but apparently it is. So, but any place that is essential, if you don't work at a gas station, anything like that, if you're not involved with those businesses, stay home, because that is what slows the spread of the virus. Now, there's several caveats to this. They're very easy. It's a 9-page order, but it's an easy 9-page read. So things like going to work. If you work at a hospital, let's say, the act of you going to work is covered under this order. You helping your grandmother who doesn't walk, and you're bringing her food and medicine like you do every week because you're a wonderful grandchild, that is covered under the order. People that are working in, actually, surprisingly, landscaping. things that are outdoors, delivery services, FedEx, UPS, gardeners are okay. Anything where people are outside and they're working, when they have appropriate physical distance, which according to the order is 6 feet at all times, they are allowed to work. So there are several caveats, but in general, what we are trying to avoid, and this is, I think, the thing that people really hear in this order, or they would read in this order, is we're avoiding things like amusement parks, theaters, bars, clubs, anywhere where you would have several tens, hundreds of people gathered together, congregating, definitely not following social distancing rules. We're avoiding that for the time being, at least through April 13th, if not longer, according to this order, because for those that don't know, the spread of COVID-19 can happen. It's a respiratory illness. And so it happens when people breathe on each other, when they cough on each other. And it also can happen through people that are asymptomatic. So they may have COVID-19, they're not experiencing any symptoms, but now they've spread it to 3 or 4 people because they didn't know they had it. They were out not practicing good social distancing guidelines. And now what has happened is they've spread it to other people. So we're trying to avoid situations like that. So that's why you can't go to the club right now. It'll be okay. That's why we can't go to Six Flags. That's why we can't go to the movies. That's why we can't go to sit down in our favorite restaurant and have a glass of wine in a crowded Italian restaurant, because that's how you spread COVID-19. We don't want to do that. So
now the word that I hear is we can't. We can't. How is this going to be enforced?
Well, the police can enforce this. There was actually another executive order, which I'm sure you read, that came out about sheriffs in each of Georgia's 159 counties who are officers of the law, who can enforce this these orders. The order that came out on the 2nd of April, that came out on the 3rd of April, sheriffs are able to enforce that. Regular police officers at the municipal level are also able to enforce this. And I hope that, and this might sound kind of Pollyannish, but I hope that we as a people would also be enforcing this as well, because it is so, so helpful for our well-being to try to keep the distance from each other.
Definitely. I mean, we want to be alive. We want to stay safe.
Exactly.
That is the utmost importance. But I want to make sure that in doing that my clients and people's, constitutional rights are not being violated.
Exactly.
So I think it's important for people to know, and that's why I have you here. I know that you're great with these statutes and understand the political aspect of things like this. But on the legal aspect, I want to make sure that people do know that this could skew what courts may feel that is constitutional. So when an officer pulls you over, so you want to be careful. And that's another thing. Who deems, so when an officer pulls someone over, are they going to be asking, or do you know, can they ask, where are you going? What are you doing? To determine whether what you're doing is essential. Because I can imagine that certain people in certain communities may be getting pulled over more. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I definitely think, I think you brought up a great point that is something that can happen. I think that one thing people always want to be aware of, that they want to be able to communicate pretty freely if they do get pulled over, is where they are going. Hopefully it is for essential reasons, and they want to be able to show that. According to the order, the officers or sheriffs that pull you over have to give you a fair warning. They have to exhibit enough of a heads up. They give you enough of a heads up to let you know that you may be in violation of the governor's order. But I think that if people just, if they keep in mind the reason why they're going out, like I said, be able to communicate that, that's definitely one thing to do. Now, where it gets a little tricky is, I talked about those municipalities earlier. Some of them had a 9 p.m. curfew. Now, I don't remember parts of the order that specifically gave hours of a curfew, because it's more of a blanket shelter in place order from starting on, I believe that would be the 4th of April until the 13th.
Mhm.
So we don't have that 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Is it the third or the fourth?
It's the
Third.
third. You're right. It's 6 o'clock p.m. on the third. So until the 13th. So you got almost about 10 days in there. But there's nothing in there that gives a specific time frame of each day. And so before we just had, I talked about the patchwork of municipalities, we had curfew. So we had maybe 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. You were allowed to be out and about. After 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. the next day, you had to be in the house. Now you don't have that. So I think you definitely, although the state order supersedes the local and county orders that were in place before. What has happened is that now that the sheriffs can enforce it, we have to definitely be more careful about going out at night or doing things that, if you're not going to work, if you're not going to the hospital, um, obviously gatherings in neighborhoods and lots of cars, being in one area could definitely be a tip off to an officer or officers or sheriffs that may be patrolling the neighborhood. Because I definitely have seen more cops patrolling my neighborhood just in general, not harassing anyone, but just, general patrols. You want to be very careful about that type of stuff. So this is very serious because COVID-19 is very serious.
Yeah, and I know that the solicitor of Gwinnett County has said that they will prosecute people for this,
Mhm.
meaning that you can go to jail, you can be
Right.
fined. So they are going to be.
$1,000 fine if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and I believe it would be a misdemeanor
It would.
if you violate this state order. So
Yeah.
people need to be careful if you're going out. And this is one thing that I've also discussed. Would you suggest? Do you think it's good for maybe employers to have like kind of like a hall pass note to their employees
Pretty much.
when they're going to work to prevent maybe further harassment from police? And I want to say harassment because I know these
Yeah.
officers are out there risking their lives, doing their jobs to make sure that we are all safe.
True.
But as we know, sometimes things like this can be misused, and that is always, even though health is a definite concern, my
Hmm.
concern as a criminal defense attorney is that people's rights are still protected and not
Exactly.
violated. We still have that constitution that trumps this executive order.
Hmm.
And I just don't want to give officers the reason to say, hey, I pulled you over, and then have that turn into something else. So back to my question is, do you think that a hall pass or note is necessary to prevent further interaction between people and the police when people are going to work who are essential employees?
Yeah, I definitely, I think that's actually a great idea. I hate the idea of a hall pass, just from how it sounds as we're talking about it. But I definitely think that your work ID, anything that can kind of put you in a specific place at a specific time, I think is very helpful when you have an order like this, because there are going to be people that are going to be commuting and moving around and doing things and gathering in ways that are against the order, uh, during the next 10 or so days, who are in violation of the law. And so I think that for those who really are going to essential jobs, they themselves are essential workers, they're helping family members, et cetera, or might be members of protected communities under the order. I think it is important that they have some type of, if they feel that they are that much at risk, then yes, a note from an employer, a signed note from an employer uh, wouldn't hurt. A work ID wouldn't hurt. But I just, for some reason, I feel, and again, not being Pollyannish, but I just think that based on where we are now, and things are changing every day, a state order is pretty hard to, I won't say enforce, but a state order is pretty hard. That's a lot of state action at one time. And so to think that because you might take a different way home, and it might take you an extra 5 minutes to get home from your essential job, that you'll be pulled over. I don't know if it's that, pressing, but I always know that hall pass, to use your term, idea is good. I actually have a friend in Ohio, and they're under a stay-at-home order as well. And she did that. Her mother had cancer treatment, so she had to drive 2 hours to get to her mother. But the hospital system where her mother's receiving her treatment actually emailed her a signed PDF of a note that she could take in case the state trooper pulled her over. You know,
Okay.
never hurts.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Matt. And before,
Well,
I guess I make my last statement, do you have any final parting words for people who are watching this video who may be concerned about this order, who may be concerned about COVID-19? Do you have anything just to kind of end this conversation with?
okay. Well, definitely the order is real. So from 6 o'clock, April 3rd until April 13th in the state of Georgia, you are going to want to follow that order. Just because, not because it is an order from the governor, who I feel has issued this order a few weeks too late, I think. But I think it's also very, even more important for everyone's personal health and personal safety. Yes, it's an inconvenience to not be able to go to the mall, you know, during part of the month of April. Yes, it is an inconvenience to not be able to go to your favorite club or eat at your favorite restaurant. I get it. I understand it. But this is more so about protecting your health, the health of your family, public health in general, which affects us all. And I think people need to really keep that in mind as we are going through the month of April, as we're getting through these COVID-19 times. Also, one last point. People ask me and have asked me a lot over the past 2 or 3 weeks, do you think if we do a stay at home, how long will it be? Well, now we know it's until April 13th. But now people are asking me, well, do you think it'll be extended? And I actually do think it may be extended, just because the scientific data that's coming back from the epidemiologists is saying that COVID-19 is not even going to peak in Georgia until the second half of the month. And so if we are not still practicing social distancing and sheltering in place at that time, we could overrun our hospital system. We don't want to do that. So the 13th is when this order ends, the one that you can find on the Georgia governor's website. But hey, we could be looking at an extended order. We never know. So just everyone keep that in mind, is please, please, please keep you yourself and your family safe during this time.
Thank you so much. And again, Matt Stevens, who can be found on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube with the handle Mr. Prune Juice.
Thank you.
The only thing that I want to kind of add, as Matt stated, of course, we are in times that none of us could have imagined that we would be in. My main concern is that your rights are protected. As an attorney, I want my clients to know that if you do need to go out, not my clients, potential just citizens of Georgia, if you do need to go out to the store, just make sure that is essential. And if you smoke marijuana or if you carry weapons, go into the store, this may be the time. Maybe leave your marijuana at home.
Leave it at home. It is okay.
Leave it at home. Leave your weapons at home. If you need to go out to do whatever you need to do that may not be legal, just be careful, because this order will give the police, the sheriff, a reason to stop you, and it will give them probable cause to stop you, to say that, hey, we're just seeing whether you're out, not in violation of the order that was signed by Governor Kemp. And then this could lead to other things. And our court systems right now are slow. So if you're arrested, you are still entitled to a bond. Your constitutional rights are still in place. But with as slow as everything is going, it could take a little bit longer. So keep that in mind if you do want to go out with something that may not be legal on your person.
Don't speed to your essential services. Don't do that. Please don't do that.
You follow the other traffic laws and everything that are in place. But again, I am Chinwe Foster with the Foster Law Firm, where we specialize in aggressive and effective legal representation. If you have any questions about what your rights are, whether your rights are being violated, you're welcome to contact my office to set up a consultation. You can contact my office at 404-525-3082 or at fosterlawga.com. Again, Matt Stevens, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this.
No problem. And thank you for watching, everyone. See you soon.